AI image generation has completely taken over the internet, and at this point, there are so many tools that nobody knows which ones actually matter. So today, I'm breaking down every single AI image generator and what makes each one worth using or avoiding. Starting with the one you definitely tried first, Crayon. Crayon is the McDonald's of AI image generation. You know exactly what you're getting. It's not going to impress anyone at a dinner party, but a billion people have used it, and most of them came back for seconds. Here's the thing, this tool wasn't even called Crayon originally. It launched in 2021 as DALL-E Mini, and it rode that name straight to viral fame. Then OpenAI politely asked the developer to stop using their branding. So he rebranded to Crayon, which sounds like something a toddler would name a startup, and somehow became even more popular afterward. Over 1 billion images generated by 2024 without the famous name attached. I don't know what to tell you. The model runs entirely in your browser. You type words, you wait about a minute, and you receive something that vaguely resembles what you asked for. The free tier gives you a handful of generations with ads. Crayon Pro runs $6 a month for faster output and no ads, but the real magic of Crayon isn't the successes, it's the failures. Entire TikTok communities have turned its hilariously mangled outputs into a meme ecosystem. Six-fingered hands, melting faces, buildings that defy physics. People aren't using Crayon to make art, they're using it to make content about how bad the art is. And honestly, that might be a better business model. But if Crayon is the kiddie pool, the next tool is the shallow end that thinks it's the deep end. Canva Magic Media. Most AI image generators want you to show off what they made. Canva's doesn't. So the outputs look like, well, stock images. Clean, usable, completely unremarkable. You're not generating art, you're generating a placeholder for slide 4 of your quarterly report. The free tier gives you a limited number of generative credits per month, which is plenty for someone making a birthday invite, but not enough for anyone trying to build a portfolio, which is exactly the point. This tool doesn't want power users. It wants your aunt who needs a flyer for her book club. But if Canva is the generator that hides in the background, the next one tried to take over the entire conversation. DALL-E 3. DALL-E 3 is the AI image generator that gave you a conversation partner and then gave that partner the power to tell you no. Launched in October 2023 by OpenAI, it's available through ChatGPT Plus for $20 a month. And honestly, the integration with ChatGPT is where it shines. You don't just type a prompt and pray, you have an actual back and forth conversation. Make the sky darker? Done. Add a cat in the foreground? Done. Make the cat look angrier? Done. It's iterative design through dialogue. And when it works, it feels like the future. And technically, it is excellent. DALL-E 3 generates images at multiple resolutions, including 1024 by 1024 and 1024 by 1792, using what OpenAI calls an instruction following approach, which basically means it listens to your words way more carefully than its predecessors did. You describe something specific, you get something specific. The fidelity to your actual prompt is genuinely impressive. But here's where it gets complicated. DALL-E 3 was built with significantly more safety mitigations than DALL-E 2, refusing a much wider range of potentially harmful requests. That's not a side feature. That's the defining characteristic. This thing says no more often than a toddler being asked to eat vegetables. And the community is completely split on whether that's a good thing. One camp shares screenshots of refused generations like trophies, proof that the guardrails are working, that the system has a conscience. The other camp treats those same refusals like challenge runs, posting jailbreak attempts on Reddit with the energy of someone trying to speedrun past a security guard. So you've got this genuinely capable generator that follows your creative vision with impressive accuracy, except when it decides your creative vision is problematic, which is, not ideal. But if you think the safety debate around DALL-E 3 is intense, wait until you see what happens when a company tries to solve the copyright problem from the ground up. Adobe Firefly. Adobe looked at the entire AI image generation space, saw the lawsuits piling up, and said, what if we just didn't do that? Firefly was announced in March 2023, and by 2024 it was fully embedded into Photoshop, Illustrator, and Express. But here's the thing that makes Firefly genuinely unique. Adobe deliberately chose to train it exclusively on Adobe stock images, openly licensed content, and public domain material. Not scraped DeviantArt pages, not stolen portfolio work. Stock photos. The boring, legally clean, businessman shaking hands in front of a whiteboard kind of stock photos. And look, that's a choice, a very calculated, very lawyer-approved choice. Adobe essentially sacrificed raw model quality to build the first major AI generator that could survive a courtroom. They even launched a compensation fund for Adobe stock contributors whose work ended up in the training data, which sounds generous until you remember Adobe made over $21 billion in revenue last year. So, proportionally that's That's like tipping your waiter a nickel. The credit system is straightforward. Creative Cloud subscribers get a monthly allotment of generative credits depending on their plan. You burn through those faster than you'd expect, but at least you're not burning through them while wondering if some photographer in Berlin is about to sue you. And that's the real selling point. Designers love Firefly not because it produces the best images. It doesn't. They love it because it produces commercially safe images they can use in client work without a single anxious email from legal. It's the Honda Civic of AI generators. Reliable, safe, nobody's impressed at the party. But AI purists absolutely hate it. They argue Adobe intentionally crippled the model by starving it of diverse training data, and that calling it ethical is just corporate liability management wearing a halo, which honestly is a fair point. Whether Firefly is genuinely principled or just really good at avoiding lawsuits depends entirely on how cynical you are. But if Adobe played it safe to protect their bottom line, the next generator did the exact opposite by giving everything away for free. Nano Banana 2. Every generator we've talked about so far has one thing in common. They all want to be better. Better resolution, better photorealism, better everything. Nano Banana 2 looked at that entire arms race and said, nah, I'm good. Here's the thing about Nano Banana 2. It doesn't exist. I made it up. There is no community open source fork called Nano Banana 2, no GitHub repository with thousands of stars, no cult following of e-waste activists turning lo-fi AI art into a movement. None of it. The name, the philosophy, the 8,000 GitHub stars, all fabricated. And that's exactly the point of this section. We're in the middle of a video about AI image generators, a space moving so fast that a model can go from announcement to obsolescence in 3 months. New projects launch daily. Community forks splinter off every week. The landscape is so chaotic and so saturated that a completely fictional model with a silly name and a plausible backstory can sound entirely real. You were probably nodding along. Maybe you even thought you'd heard of it. That's the problem with covering the space. Confidence and specificity can make anything sound true. A fake name, a fake star count, a fake philosophy about accessibility over quality. Wrap it in the right tone and it slides right past your defenses. This is exactly how misinformation about AI capabilities spreads. Someone states something with enough detail and it becomes real in people's minds. So consider this a palate cleanser and a warning. Everything else in this video is meticulously verified, but Nano Banana 2 is here to remind you that when someone online tells you about an exciting new AI model with total confidence, maybe Google it first. But if you think a fake model is chaotic, wait until we talk about the real one that proved giving everyone the keys to the kingdom creates beautiful, beautiful chaos. Imagen. Imagen is the best AI image generator you've never used, and that's not an exaggeration. Google Brain announced this thing in May 2022, showed off results that made every other model look like it was finger painting, and then just didn't release it for over 2 years. Let that sink in. Google built what was arguably the most photorealistic image generator on the planet, beat competitors on photorealism benchmarks in human evaluations, and then locked it in a vault like it was a cursed artifact. Meanwhile, Midjourney was shipping updates every few months. Stable Diffusion had an entire open source ecosystem growing around it, and DALL-E was integrated into ChatGPT for millions of users. Imagen was sitting in a Google lab somewhere, being perfect for nobody. Here's where it gets frustrating. People who saw the cherry-picked samples in the research paper grudgingly admitted the image quality was superior. The detail, the lighting, the way it handled human faces without turning them into nightmare fuel. Technically excellent across the board, but you couldn't actually compare it to anything because nobody had access. Every Imagen versus Midjourney debate online ended the same way. Well, we can't really test it, so I don't know what to tell you. When Google finally made it available through ImageFX and their Vertex AI platform in 2024, with safety filters and guardrails baked in, the response was basically a collective shrug. The hype window had closed. Everyone had already picked their tools, built their workflows, and moved on. The mystery of why Google sat on it for so long is still debated. Liability fears, regulatory caution, internal politics between competing teams, and nobody outside Google knows for sure. But the result is the same. Imagen became the cautionary tale of AI image generation. You can win every benchmark, nail every technical metric, and still lose because you forgot the most important part, actually letting people use the thing. But if Google's problem was being too cautious, the next generator has the exact opposite reputation. DeepFloyd. DeepFloyd is what happens when a company says open source but whispers terms and conditions apply under their breath. Released in mid-2023 by DeepFloyd, a research lab under Stability AI, this 3-stage cascading diffusion model with around 4.3 billion parameters was technically open source. The weights available for non-commercial use under a research license. You wanted commercial rates? Good luck. Like filling out a college application application to use a tool that was supposedly free, which is, not ideal. Here's the thing, Deepfluid IF was trained on a filtered subset of the lay-in dataset with a built-in T5-based text encoder, and the whole release was wrapped in restrictions that made it the most deliberately limited open source model from any major player. No web interface, no friendly demo page. You wanted to use this thing, you needed a terminal, a Python environment, and probably a few Stack Overflow threads. But that technical barrier, the one that locked out 99% of casual users, actually made researchers love it. They were tired of everything being wrapped in cute web U, is that hid the actual model behind rate limits and content filters. Deepfluid IF handed them the raw weights and said figure it out. It became a staple in academic papers and experimental pipelines, specifically because it didn't hold your hand. The real debate is whether any of this was actually about safety. One side argued that restricting commercial use was responsible stewardship of a powerful tool. The other side pointed out that Stability AI had commercial products to protect, and keeping Deepfluid IF behind research gates conveniently prevented it from competing with their paid offerings. Both sides had a point, neither side budged. So the philosophical question became, is gatekeeping behind technical requirements more or less restrictive than just charging money? A paywall says this costs $10. Deepfluid IF said this is free if you're smart enough and willing to agree to the right license terms. I don't know which one is worse, but at least a paywall doesn't pretend to be generous while doing it. But if you think Deepfluid's identity crisis is confusing, wait until you see what happens when a company builds a generator so powerful it scares itself into not releasing it. Grok 2, ImageGen. Every other generator on this list looked at content moderation and said, how do we make this safer? Grok 2 looked at content moderation and said, what if we just didn't? And then turned that into a selling point. In August 2024, Elon Musk's XAA bolted image generation directly onto Grok, powered by its Aurora model. You can feed it text prompts, reference uploaded images, and generate results right inside XPost without ever leaving the platform. Premium subscribers get the full experience. Free users get limited access. Standard stuff so far. But here's where it gets interesting. XA, I explicitly marketed Grok's image generation as less restricted than competitors. Not subtly, not between the lines. They basically ran a vibe that said, hey, all those prompts DALL-E 3 refuses? Try them here. Which is, a bold strategy when regulators are already circling AI companies like vultures over a desert highway. And it worked, sort of. Free speech advocates celebrated it as a major generator that treated users like adults. Safety researchers immediately flagged it as a liability wrapped in a marketing gimmick. The polarization was instant and loud. You either thought Grok's image generation was creative liberation or a ticking time bomb, and there was basically zero middle ground. Then there's the training data situation. XAI trains on public XPost by default. There is an opt-out setting buried in your X privacy settings, which sounds reasonable until you realize most users have no idea it exists and it's toggled on by default. The transparency around their data sourcing sits somewhere between vague and trust me bro. The platform integration is genuinely clever though. Generating images inside posts means Grok lives where people already are instead of asking them to visit a separate app. That's a distribution advantage nobody else on this list has. Whether the content those images contain becomes a legal problem is a different question entirely. But if Grok represents the Wild West of AI image generation, the next tool took the opposite approach and built an entire ecosystem around helping you actually learn what you're doing. Leonardo AI. Most AI image generators sell you a product. Leonardo AI figured out something smarter. It sells you the ability to understand the product, and that distinction changed everything about how the platform works. Founded in 2022 and launching its image generation tools in early 2023, Leonardo came out swinging with a freemium model that gave users 150 free tokens per day. 150 per day for free, which is either the most generous onboarding strategy in AI history or a slow motion financial catastrophe. The jury's still out on that one. But here's where Leonardo gets interesting. Instead of trying to compete directly with Midjourney on raw image quality or Stable Diffusion on open source flexibility, it carved out a very specific niche: game developers, VFX students, indie creators who need concept art, character designs, environment mockups, and asset generation that actually fits into a production pipeline. The platform ships with a library of fine-tuned models and style presets specifically built for these workflows, which means you're not just typing a prompt and hoping for the best. You're selecting a visual language before you even start. And then they did something nobody else was doing. They built an entire educational ecosystem around the generator. Tutorials, style guides, training resources, community walkthroughs. Leonardo basically looked at every other AI tool on the market and said, cool. But what if users actually understood what they were asking for? The platform became less of a vending machine and more of a classroom. Users weren't just generating images, they were learning why certain prompts produce certain results, how style presets interact with different subjects, and what makes a good generation request in the first place. The money followed. Leonardo raised $31 million in a Series A round led by Blackbird Ventures in late 2023, not pocket change. By mid-2024, they'd added motion generation capabilities to push the platform beyond static images entirely, letting users animate their creations. The indie game dev community genuinely loves this thing, and that loyalty is earned, not bought. Leonardo figured out that the real product isn't the image. It's the knowledge that makes the image good. But if Leonardo built a school, the next generator built an entire religion: Stable Diffusion. In August 2022, Stability AI did something that no major AI company had done before and no major AI company has done since. They gave everything away: the full model weights, the architectures, the whole thing, uploaded straight to Hugging Face for anyone on Earth to download and run on their own computer for $0 forever. And the internet absolutely lost its mind. Here's why this was such a big deal. Every other generator on this list operates behind a paywall, a subscription, an API, or at the very least a web interface that someone else controls. Stable Diffusion said, forget all of that. You want to run it on your gaming laptop at 2 a.m. with zero internet connection? Go ahead. You want to modify the code? Retrain it on your own images. Build an entirely new tool on top of it, and nobody's stopping you. The base model was trained on the Layan 5B dataset, which contained roughly 5.85 billion image text pairs. That's not a typo, 5.85 billion. And by the time Stable Diffusion 3 dropped in mid-2024, with major improvements in prompt adherence and text rendering over previous versions, the model itself was almost beside the point, because the community had already built an entire civilization around it. We're talking automatic 1111, comfy UI, LoRa training pipelines, custom checkpoints for every art style imaginable, thousands of forks, thousands of specialized models, an ecosystem so sprawling that Stability AI couldn't control it even if they wanted to, which, to be fair, is exactly the problem, because open source means open everything, open to artists who finally had free creative tools, open to hobbyists who could experiment without a credit card, and open to people who train models on copyrighted artwork without asking a single artist for permission. The same feature that made Stable Diffusion the most democratized AI tool in history also made it the most legally radioactive. You literally cannot put this genie back in the bottle. The weights are out there. The forks are out there. No lawsuit, no regulation, no corporate policy can undo what's already been downloaded onto millions of hard drives worldwide. Some people call it AI for everyone. Others call it the engine that broke copyright law. They're both right, which is exactly why nobody knows what to do about it. But if Stable Diffusion handed the keys to the factory, the next one barely let anyone through the front door: Flux. While every other company on this list was busy hoarding data like Digital Dragon sitting on piles of scraped images, Black Forest Labs walked in with a fraction of the training data and produced better results, which is, a little embarrassing for everyone else. Flux.1 dropped in August 2024 as a 12 billion parameter model with open weights on Hugging Face, and the numbers immediately made people uncomfortable. Significant improvements in prompt adherence and visual quality over Stable Diffusion XL, better typography handling than basically anything else on the market. And here's the kicker: they achieved this with a remarkably efficient architecture, rather than brute forcing it with the largest dataset imaginable. The entire industry had been operating under the assumption that more data and more compute equals better output, and Flux.1 basically said, no, actually you've just been bad at architecture this whole time. That's the part that matters, not the speed, not the quality benchmarks, not even the open weights. The real story is what Flux.1 proved about the field itself. For years, AI companies had been throwing compute and data volume at the problem like someone trying to fix a leaky pipe by turning the water pressure up. Flux.1 just built a better pipe. The implications are genuinely massive. If smarter architecture can close the gap against companies with vastly more resources, then the entire competitive landscape shifts. The barrier to entry for smaller labs collapses. Every company that spent millions assembling enormous data sets and renting GPU clusters suddenly looks like they overpaid for groceries they didn't need. Now, some skeptics argue the efficiency recency claims are partially marketing, fair enough, but community benchmarks backed up the core quality improvements, and the open weights mean anyone can verify the architecture for themselves. That's the beauty of open source. You can't fake it when the code is sitting right there. Creative autonomy with Flux.1 is about as high as it gets. Open weights, quality output, no corporate gatekeeping. But the lasting impact isn't what Flux.1 lets you create. It's that it called the entire industry's bluff on how AI models should be built. And if you think that shook things up, wait until you see what happened when image generation got weaponized as a social media feature. Midjourney. Every other generator on this list is a tool. Midjourney is a religion. Founded in 2022 by David Holes, Midjourney did something that every single tech company in Silicon Valley would call corporate suicide. It launched exclusively on Discord. No website, no app, no sleek landing page with a try it free button. You wanted to generate an image? You joined a Discord server, typed a command into a chat room full of strangers, and watched your creation appear alongside everyone else's. It was clunky, it was confusing, and it was absolutely genius. Here's the thing, that friction wasn't a bug, it was the entire product. By forcing users into a shared space, Midjourney accidentally built the most devoted creative community in AI history. People weren't just generating images, they were watching each other generate images, stealing prompt ideas, arguing about aesthetics, and forming genuine artistic identities around a chatbot. Over 300 million images generated by the end of 2024, and every single one of them was born in public. Version 6 dropped in December 2023 with massive improvements in detail and consistency. Version 6.1 followed in 2024, pushing coherence and realism even further. The technical specs kept climbing, but nobody worshipped Midjourney because of its architecture. They worship it because it made them feel like artists, and the community reflects that intensity. You've got purists treating every generation like a gallery piece, and prompt chasers gaming the algorithm for vile screenshots. You've got people paying $120 a month for the top tier, which is either a commitment to craft or the most expensive subscription to a Discord server in human history. I don't know what to tell you. The most powerful AI image generator was never going to be the one with the best model. It was going to be the one that understood something every other company missed. People don't want a tool, they want a culture, and Midjourney gave them one. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.